Hey there, welcome back to another episode of American Snippets. I am your co-host, Barb Allen. Do yourself a favor wherever you are as you listen to this and crank up the volume because you absolutely do not want to miss one single word of what today's guest has to say. Justin Constantine, he is a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Marine Corps. He has such a diverse array of military and civilian careers and awards, which are a reflection of his own intellect, drive, patriotism, and resilience. Justin's survival and recovery from a sniper's bullet are part miracle, part superhuman strength, and part support. Today, Justin is widely recognized in military and civilian communities as well, which is no small feat. As a TEDx speaker, he's an author, a corporate coach, a chief business officer at JobPath, which is described as the most robust and fastest growing veteran employment platform in the country. Today, Justin is going to share with us not only his extraordinary story of service and injury, but the insight he gained from his extraordinary recovery, information about some of the nonprofits he's involved in, his life as a renowned speaker, and his thoughts on how we as Americans can push off of our own struggles to achieve our own American dream. Justin, thank you so much for A, for all you've done, and B, for taking the time to be with us today.
Well, thank you, Barb. Hopefully your listeners are still awake after that introduction. And it's a real pleasure.
Did you just say I bored our listeners?
Well, you spent a lot of time talking about me, which I can't imagine is that interesting. So, but the point is, I'm really happy to be here with you today.
I'm happy to have you here too, even though I think you just called me boring. But we'll get it.
No.
That's okay. I like it when we keep it honest. And now I know the tone is set. Here we go. Okay. So Justin, let us start off first. I mean, you have, like I said, in that introduction, I had to write it down because I had the cut and paste, right? Your resume is so huge and so diverse. The awards you've won, all this stuff, the jobs you've had, that I really had to kind of narrow it down. But let's kind of take it from the point where you picked up your career as a United States Marine. What inspired you, first off, to join the Marines?
Yeah, my interest started back in high school. A friend of my father's was a Vietnam vet, a Marine officer, and I think he realized his sons were not going to join the Marine Corps, and so I was the focus of his attention. So I was like his little recruit. Yeah, and so he talked to me about it. It sounded good. He gave me one of Senator James Webb's book called Fields of Fire about being a platoon infantry commander in Vietnam, which was an incredible book, and it just inspired me. I ended up applying for a Navy ROTC scholarship. Did not get it. In hindsight, rightfully so, and. But so I thought, okay, well, I guess that's it. I went to college and didn't realize there was an opportunity to really join the military. It wasn't until I was in law school at University of Denver out in Colorado, and I was working at the school gym, and a buddy of mine came by just to chat. He was leaving. I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going down and talk to the officer recruiter for the Marine Corps. I said, what are you talking about? We're 27. We're, old guys. We're way too old at the time. But he said, no, they have a special program for lawyers. And so I said, well, tell him I'll come see him tomorrow. And wow. I did. I went down and saw him the next day. That was in April of 97. They were able to move some slots around for officer candidate school that summer. They called me in, I guess it was like late May or early June, and said, can you get to Quantico, Virginia in a week? And I said, sure. And I packed my car and canceled my summer job and drove across country.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
All right. So right there in that little clip, I want to go back. I have to ask, why do you say you rightfully so were not awarded that ROTC scholarship?
I lived in Northern Virginia. It's a very competitive area. There's tons. Yeah. So, I had a regular GPA, like, 3 or something like that. It's very competitive. And so that's why I say that.
Okay. And then, so you have a career as an attorney. Like law school that's no casual commitment, right? Like to go through law school, but you're willing then to step away from that full-time civilian career in law that you just studied and went through all those years to gain, to apply to the military?
Yeah, so I was in law school. So law school is, if you're going full time, it's 3 years long. This was towards the end of my second year. So the summer after my
Okay.
second year, I went to Quantico, went to Officer Candidate School, was commissioned as an officer, came back and finished my last year of law school. And so I came into the Marine Corps as a lawyer.
Wow. And so,
JAG.
yeah, as a JAG officer, which is something else at another point. I'm going to pick your brain apart from my own
Okay.
experience.
Okay.
Maybe on another off
Sure.
interview conversation. I'd love to. So now you're in the Marine Corps and you are deployed.
Well, not quite. On active duty, I served as a criminal defense counsel in Okinawa, Japan,
Right.
and then as a criminal prosecutor for about 4 years at Camp Pendleton. So that was my active duty time. I left active duty in '04 as a captain. So I had tons of great trial work. Really enjoyed my time. And it wasn't until I joined the reserve the next year in '05 in D.C. Again, with it was actually a group of lawyers who teach the law of war and Geneva Convention to Marines who were deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan, so they know what they could and could not do there. And then in the spring of 2006, I volunteered to transfer to a different unit that was going to deploy.
Okay.
So I did not deploy as a lawyer. I was there as a civil affairs team leader.
Right. Okay. So now you're over there. So tell us first,
Yep.
what are some of the cases that you would handle, when you were in Okinawa and all that? What are some? Because not a lot of people, maybe now it's in the news more, but not many people think about the legal.
Very, very full caseload. Actually, it was, in that regard, it was excellent. I mean, in Okinawa, in 1 year, as a very junior officer, I had, I think, a dozen fully contested court martials, which are, real trials, from jury selection to sentencing. Let's see, the crimes range from something as serious as rape to refusing an anthrax vaccination to burglary, travel fraud, assault, drug use. So a wide variety of crimes, just like you might find in a regular small town.
But you see, and that is a point that I think is well worth noting too. I mean, because, and this was a lesson I learned the hard way in my own life, but there's the perception, and I'm going to clarify this quickly so it doesn't sound like I'm going down a bad road, right? But
Sure.
there is the perception that anybody who is in the military is, by definition, simply putting on the uniform, some sort of person that is infallible, right? And not subject to the same problems. But that is not the case. There are people who get into the military who slip through the cracks, and there are people who kind of take a different path once they're in. So, and that's not to harp on the military or trash the military. I'm saying the importance of people in that system to catch those people and within the ranks of the military to kind of catch on and kind of course correct and do what you can to sequester them and keep to filter that out of the military and keep the military strong.
You're exactly right, Barb. It's a microcosm of American society. There's all sorts of people, and people come to the military with different backgrounds, and they're exposed to different things. I think you're kind of talking about how maybe leadership could be a part of the solution, and I think that's true. I submitted a brief as a reservist with an active duty lawyer for a sailor who had come back from a deployment with a sterling record. He had PTSD, self-identified, was not getting the help he asked for, ended up assaulting someone and getting administratively separated with other honorable conditions, which meant he was ineligible for VA benefits. And there's a lot of those cases, and it's disheartening to see that folks who, I'm certainly not saying all veterans have PTSD, or if they do, that
they're a risk, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying that at all. But for those who do need help, and if the leadership solution is, well, we're just going to give them bad paper and get them out of here after they've done great on a deployment and service, to me that's a leadership failure. And I think leadership should bend over backwards to make sure that we're putting out a better quote unquote product than what we received. And I think there is a lot of room at small unit leadership all the way up to the top levels for that.
Yep. And I love that you're willing that you see it that way too. Sometimes when I start down that question, people get very defensive, but no, I think it's so important. I think the people who are serving deserve to be kind of protected from unnecessary harm, right? The people in the ranks, and to keep the morale and unit high too. So I love that you did that. Once upon a time, I had a very bad view of defense attorneys. I think it's pretty typical, right?
Right.
But my life experiences have taught me the error of my ways.
There we go.
So I like to speak with people like that. Okay, so let's fast forward a little, and we won't spend too much time on this, but obviously this is a turning point in your life and a pivotal part of your message and your story. So take us, if you will, through that day on your deployment when you were injured.
Yeah, well, let me just kind of set the scene a little bit. So I deployed, as a civil affairs team leader. We had a civil affairs group in Naval Station Anacostia, which is with Bowling Air Force Base, and it's a joint base in Washington, D.C. So we were a reserve unit. So I came over, and my orders were in June of 2006. So I met the rest of the unit then, and we deployed about 2.5 months later. And so we trained very hard there in D.C. and in local bases around there. We knew we would be attached to an infantry battalion once we got in theater. As I had a small team, there were less than 10 of us. So our headquarters was in Fallujah, but our team was attached to a Marine Infantry Battalion, 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines out of Camp Lejeune, but they were in an area called Habbaniyah, which is in Al Anbar, in between Fallujah and Ramadi. So in 2006, very kinetic time for the Marines there. We had troops in contact every day, everywhere. This is right before the surge of '07, so the insurgency was very powerful then. So lots going on. So civil affairs, our mission was to help create relationships with local Iraqi leaders. So really, basically, to put the young men back to work there, get them, provide opportunities of something good and productive to do, and inject money into the economy and help rebuild so much that was destroyed. So, and really to...
Jeez, that's quite the task.
Well, it wasn't so task. And it's when General Petraeus is talking about COIN, which is a counterinsurgency, plan. This is part of that. Like, we want to convince the locals that, they call it winning over the hearts and minds, that like hey, we want to be part of the solution. We're not just here to, kill everyone. That's not what we're trying to do. And so, but it's hard to do that in a kinetic environment where there's fighting going on all around you. And so that was the environment that we had. We got there 2 weeks after I got there. We were on our first night patrol, and one of the vehicles in our convoy was blown up in an IED. I was in the front with a night vision goggles, so I saw that. Wow. Our Marines reacted perfectly, though. 2 weeks after that, and I know you were asking about when I was shot. But
that's okay. Yeah, please.
2 weeks after that, we were on a foot patrol with the colonel, the battalion commander, and the rest of his jump team. And we were looking for IEDs, and we were trying to find a couple folks there that we've been looking for a while. Lieutenant and I got very close to an IED. We saw there was a bump in the road. We were trying to figure out what it was. It went off, and I remember this. Thank God the person had put it in backwards, because the lieutenant and I were sprayed with dirt and gravel. But if it had been done properly, it would have been metal and killed all of us. And it was bizarre. It was bizarre to get up, brush ourselves off, and then continue patrolling for several hours. And
nothing happened. Like you have to just, like we weren't just, wow, that's crazy.
Right. I couldn't help thinking that, man, 2 months ago I was in an air-conditioned office in Washington, D.C. practicing law, but here I am. And so I remember that fully. I don't remember when I got shot. So I was shot on, it was October 18, 2006. So just over 12 years ago. I mentioned the Colonel DeGrossier, who was an incredible Marine leader, and I was on his jump team. A dozen of us who worked closely together. We actually knew each other from playing Marine Corps rugby together on active duty, so that was kind of cool. Once I got there and checked in with him, I realized that, we went out on a lot of patrols so he could check on his Marines. He had a huge area he was responsible for, and he wanted to go to all our forward operating bases and look at his Marines and make sure they were doing okay, like any good leader would. And so we were in an area near one of our FOBs, our forward operating bases, and we knew a sniper was in the area. He'd already killed a few of our Marines in the past couple of weeks. We had a reporter with us that day who was doing a story about the colonel and about 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines, and so I noticed the reporter was who was standing quite still at one of our previous stops at a police station, and so, which is a terrible idea if a sniper could be tracking on you, and so we got to our next stop, and he and I were in the same vehicle. And as we were walking away from the Humvee, I said, hey, Jay, you need to move quickly here. Don't forget about that sniper. we don't want something to happen to you or something to that effect. And Jay told me later, he called me like a year later and told me that based on that, he took a big step forward. And a split second later, a bullet came in where his head had been, hit the wall between us. And so that was incredible. Before I could react, the next round hit me behind my left ear. So it was a headshot, exploded out of my mouth, causing incredible damage, of course.
Yeah.
The Marines around me thought I'd been killed because I went down. There was blood everywhere. I wasn't moving. And I'm only here because an incredible Navy corpsman, George Grant, who is a true hero, ran over, exposed himself to enemy fire, performed rescue breathing, even though a bullet just went through my head, and performed an emergency tracheotomy so I wouldn't drown my own blood. Yeah, I mean, he's like what movies are made out of.
Yeah.
And he was 25 years old at the time and had never done that before. So he's incredible. He was able to keep me alive, and then he and the colonel, the rest of the Marines, in particular, Corporal Jordan Bueller, a 21-year-old Marine, who put his own life on the line and drove us at a high speed down roads with IEDs on them. If we hit one, he would have died. But he put his own life on the line for me too, and got me to the aid station so then they could operate on me. Yeah, so just incredible.
21 and 25 years old.
Exactly.
That's like,
I look back at what I was doing when I was that age. It wasn't anything like that, I'll tell you that.
No, heck no. Are you in touch with that? Like, have you ever been in touch with them afterwards?
Very close with George, the corpsman, constantly, and Jordan Bueller several times a year we touch base.
That's great. What an
and the colonel as well. Colonel George there as well. I've helped him with some fundraising for his nonprofit, and I keep in touch with him as well.
So do you think about that at all? All those things that had to take place. I mean, something in your head told you to warn that reporter, right? Like some little voice in you said, "Oh, that's not a good idea," and you acted on it. And then this happened, and then these people were in your presence who did that. And, literally the difference between life and death is that they took those measures. Maybe
for sure.
Some other people, if had been there, wouldn't have taken those measures. I mean, I always break things down like that. Maybe it's because of my own experience or whatever, but like that's right there is just amazing in itself.
Many times, Barb, and I said to people, look, I probably should have died like many other folks over there. As you said, part miracle, part amazing people, whatever that combination is. And anyone could have done anything differently, and I may not have made it, and no one would blame them. It was just so lucky. I've even had a chance to talk to the doctors who operated on me right after that, because they invited me to their birthday ball, Marine Corps birthday ball. I didn't realize it was them. They invited me to be a guest speaker, and once I got there, it was a Navy captain who was the commanding officer of that unit, and two of the doctors. Yeah, so the CEO wrote me a long letter about what happened that day, because he said, we saw thousands of Marines while we were here. I remember 3 of them, and you were one of them, because I remember that day. Yeah, and so I didn't read that letter for a week. I knew it was going to be emotional for me. Yeah, and I have it at home on my desk, and it was incredible what those doctors were able to do with someone who probably shouldn't have made it, but they were able to use or develop some protocols based on what they did that day, which ended up saving other Marines later as well, which is pretty cool.
Wow. See, when you take it apart, when you peel it apart and stop, there are so many ripple effects to the things that happen. Like every little minute detail has an unforeseen ripple effect, for better or for worse. And I love those. I love pulling that apart. And that's great. So, well, I mean, it's not great, but now you have this injury and it's great, right? Not really, but so after this injury happens, you're evacuated. Yeah.
So I was evacuated, right away, immediately to Landstuhl, Germany. In fact, a year ago, I got a random email from an Air Force major who said, "Hey, sir, I was the trauma doctor on your flight. I kept watching over you while he had Googled me and found out my contact information, and so I had a chance to thank him too," which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So I went to Landstuhl for 4 days. My girlfriend, when I went to Iraq, my girlfriend Dahlia left the country also to go pursue her PhD at Cambridge University in England. She was able to come to Landstuhl pretty easily because she was in England. Typically, folks over there don't get personal visitors because it's so far. And so we were there for 4 days, and then the doctors decided it was time to send me to the military hospital in Bethesda, Maryland.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and Gaia decided to drop out her doctoral program to come be with me, even though this is a lifelong dream of hers to go to Cambridge, and she's from California. She didn't know anyone in Bethesda, Maryland, and the doctors weren't sure I was still going to survive what happened to me. But when I woke up from my coma, Gaia was there and was with me every second of my recovery. It was our recovery because she was such a critical part of that. It would have been if I had a recovery, it would have been completely different if she weren't there. And I know that's true because I saw many other wounded warriors in the hospital who were going through the same things who did not have that kind of support.
Yeah.
And it's a very different result.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were also a lifelong dream of hers, right? So she simply selected the dream.
Yes. I told her, you don't have to be here. You didn't sign up for this. And if she could have punched me in the head without really damaging me, I think she would have saying that. But yeah. To her, she said it was a no-brainer to come be with me. And then I ended up proposing to her a year later, and then we got married in 2008. It's been incredible, and she's still a big part. I mean, I still need support on things, and that's what I turn to.
Yep. Well, I mean, to be fair, every man needs support from a strong woman.
I agree. I had no problem.
I often get yelled at when I say that. I like to joke around, right? But we all need support in our own ways.
Sure.
Having that person who believes in you and you can ride each other's ups and downs and pull each other up and down. It's a gift. It is a huge gift, and I'm glad you guys both have that in your lives.
I mean, the hospital can be, and there's many other challenges in life, but mine was in the hospital, and that can be a very lonely place when people leave and go home, and the visitors, after 6 o'clock at night, and when you're just, lying on a bed thinking, this is what life is going to be like. I'm horribly disfigured. I can't eat. I can't do anything on my own. 3 months ago, I was completely different.
Like 4 months ago, you were in the air-conditioned office.
That's right. That's right.
And now you're back. Yeah, that's wild. So the injuries, when you tell people what those injuries were.
So my first surgery there was I think 18 hours long, and they took a bone out of one of my legs to reconstruct my lower jaw. Ultimately, and so I had a number of major surgeries like that. Now I've had over 24 facial reconstructive surgeries, and they took ended up taking bones from both legs to rebuild my upper and lower jaws. And so I lost most of my teeth. I have bottom dentures now, but lost most of my teeth, end of my tongue. I really can't see out my left eye, just a tiny bit, but not really at all. And I have post-traumatic stress and a traumatic brain injury. So I'm limited in a number of ways on what I could do before. Like I can't run anymore, but I can swim. I can do other cardio. I can lift weights. I went to counseling for post-traumatic stress for a year and a half, one-on-one counseling with a psychologist weekly. So 18 months of that, which was a huge part of my recovery. I really encourage other folks to do the same, not just veterans, anyone who's, frankly, veterans are who we think of when we think of PTSD, but
there's a lot of people.
The majority of people, it's from car crashes and assault and natural disasters and, growing up in a rough neighborhood. And so the numbers are staggering when you compare veterans to civilians with PTSD. But anyway, so going to that was a big part of my recovery, and really just so much of recovery I have found is about mindset and choosing what path you want to have on life and who you want to be around and how you're going to spend your time, and focusing on what you can control. We can't control a lot, but we can control what goes on in our head, and we can control how we spend our time. And so those of spending time with Dahlia and figuring out life goals and 5-year and 10-year goals and how we want to spend our time, that's all a big part of recovery.
It is. And I love, you have a lot of great messages in your talks and all this. But one thing that I have heard you say is that, because a lot of times people will realize like something catastrophic happens to them. For me, it was the death of my husband. For you, it was your injury. For somebody else, it was somebody else, right? And that causes you to kind of take stock in your life. And a lot of times people will change and either come to realize some sort of strength within them or positive nature or turn bitter. But what I thought it was so interesting, you are among I don't know that I've heard anybody else specifically point this out, that you make it a point to note that you and Dahlia, you were positive from the start. So this positivity within you, it isn't a result of that. Rather, it just survived the trauma and tragedy that you guys went through. That positivity was not a casualty of it. And I love that you point that out. And how did you maintain going into it with that positive mindset? And I want to touch on this a little. I wish I had gone into my own life with that mindset. Like, I can survive this, I can survive that. When I lost my husband, I had literally said to him, nothing can happen to you because I can't survive without you. I'm not interested in life without you. So when he was lost, that's the foundation I was leaning on, right? So the importance of having that foundation in your life, whether you've experienced trauma, tragedy, setbacks or not. Talk a minute about the difference that made and how that helped you all through that, having that already.
I think if I had the magic bullet on resilience, the Army and the other branches would pay me a lot of money to get everyone up to sea from a good war deployment.
No, of course.
But you are right. It didn't start when I was injured. And I think there are a number of factors that were part of my recovery, including I was 37 years old at the time, and I had already left the Marine Corps once. So it wasn't like I felt, oh, great, I'm wounded, my career in the military is over, which was a big concern for younger wounded warriors. They never envision this happening, and they think their life is over. Also, of course, having Dahlia there, as we said, but also I've always been pretty optimistic. I've never faced trauma like this before, by no means. But I think just being also, I hate to say this, but I was treated differently as a senior officer in the hospital. I was a major, and so I was treated with respect that I did not always see with, for instance, my roommate who was a lance corporal, just being treated well. And also, once I went to other hospitals outside the military, I could see how different folks there with different backgrounds are treated. And so I think just being treated well was in the back of my mind as well, and made me feel optimistic. So that's a lesson for others, to treat other people well, because you never know how it's going to affect them. But also, I think it comes from I've had many leadership positions growing up, whether it was class president or rugby captain or whatever it was, and I try to lead from the front and set an example wherever I go. I do this in my wounded warrior community. I try to, and so I think that all part of, and always thinking life is good and life's going to keep getting better. I certainly wasn't walking around preaching that from the mountaintops, but that was in my mind. I was always pushing, trying to do better and experience life in a better way. And so I think that all wrapped up into the injury. And then I never had suicidal ideations. Thank goodness. I never had that. I did not stay on the pain medication a minute longer than I needed to. I wanted to get better. And in my mind, I always thought after I got over the shock of what I looked like and, concerns, I thought, I'm going to get better. I'm going to do everything the doctors say. I'm going to do everything the physical therapists say. I'm going to follow everything to a T. And I did that. And here I am now.
Wow. So you made that huge commitment
I did.
To that. Was there a time, commitment aside, saying like you committed in your head, but
sure.
How did you keep that commitment to yourself? Were there times that you were like, this just hurts, and this is hard?
For sure. Even now I get frustrated with like, I can't eat very well because of problems with my mouth. So I drool all the time. Like this morning, literally. Getting dressed, I drooled on my dress shirt, and I'm like, it's been 12 years. I'm tired of this. But I thought, in the grand scheme of it, I'm so lucky to be here. Others are dealing with a lot worse stuff. I remind myself of that almost daily. And so I certainly had bad days. I remember early on in my recovery at home taking a shower and looking down at my legs and seeing these big scars and seeing the scars on my face, and my head was distorted. And I just had kind of a breakdown and just thought, man, what is life going to be like? What am I can't just go play pickup basketball like I did, or go into an office and communicate clearly like I used to, or whatever. And I think everyone probably faces those things. But over time. I've pushed myself. I've chosen to not engage in every activity under the sun, but just ones that are important to me. I want to engage in fewer things and do each of them very well. And that's been a big part of my mental recovery, as well as seeing, I stayed in the reserves after I was injured. I went to the Marine Corps Command and Staff College as a reservist, and we had a small class, but there were two of us who were the honor grads in our class, and that was a big milestone in my mind, because I thought, I got shot in the head, but here I am still able to compete
That's
mentally.
Great. Yep.
And so if we kind of take sight and not just immediately move on to the next goal, but appreciate little steps along the way and cherish those. Like when I was in the hospital, walking with a walker, learning to walk again. At first, walking 10 feet to my door and back, that was a big deal. And so taking time to celebrate those little steps along the way, that really, I think, builds self-confidence and makes you push to the next level.
Yeah, and thank you for noting that too. And that was something that I wanted to touch on, because sometimes people who are trying to to achieve some goal or push past some setback, they can feel like if they have a setback, if they have a breakdown for a day, that they can feel like they failed, like that signifies failure.
No,
but that is in fact a natural part to recovery and healing and overcoming. You have to allow yourself to fail. So I'm so glad that you said that and shared that, because I hate when people feel like they have to give up because they broke down. It's not weak. You're not weak when you break down. You lose it. I think it takes strength to acknowledge that you need that time to just, you know what? I'm going to let this happen now. I'm going to just go into it.
That's right.
And so I can get past it. So so thank you for sharing that part as well. So you mentioned quickly then, you had touched on that, and I want to go into it now, some nonprofits. You talked about the mentorship that you include in your nonprofit work, but you are in fact on the board of several nonprofits. Can you take us through those?
I'm on the board I've been on the board of the Wounded Warrior Project for quite some time. I'm coming up to the end. I have like one more year, I think, but maybe it's been like 7 or 8 years. It's been quite 7 or 8 years. It's been quite some time, which has been very educational. And I started off as a recipient, as a Wounded Warrior, receiving Wounded Warrior Project's support. And so when they asked me to join the board, that was
awesome.
A pretty big deal. Yeah, it was a pretty big deal. I feel like I'm helping in a different position, help other Wounded Warriors. So I'm on the board of Wounded Warrior Project, another group called Psych Armor, which has a mental health background, but does a lot in the veteran space. Really not helping veterans per se, but all other folks who are working with veterans, help educate them about veterans and caregivers and military spouses. And then I actually co-founded a nonprofit 3 years ago with an Army friend of mine, Scott Davidson, and it's called the Veteran Success Resource Group, because we felt like there are so many nonprofits that came up after 9/11. It's overwhelming if you Google it. And so we thought we need to hold some events so transitioning service members and veterans in whatever community could find out what those local resources are. So we started in Northern Virginia, and then up here in New York, where I live, we started hosting these events, and maybe have like 40 or 50 nonprofits and schools and employers and mentors there, and all free for everyone. And then just have a space. Veterans can come and walk around, find out, I need something on mental health, or I need a loan for my business, or I can talk to the VA about GI Bill, or a military spouse looking for work, or whatever it was. Wow. So we started doing that, and it's grown and grown. Now our events are called Burbiz, as in bourbon and business, because we have about 20 distilleries that donate lots of adult beverages for our events, and we have professional athletes there. We have Medal of Honor recipients there, like Clint Romashaw supports us in a big way. Scott has lots of great connections. We have tons of employers, and they're a lot of fun. These events are just build camaraderie. We're having a massive event in April of next year at the MGM Grand at National Harbor. And so it'll be a really big Burbiz event, our typical 2-hour networking event, and then there'll be stage time for veteran comedians and veteran musicians to play for the audience as well. And so these not too many events exist like this at this level. We have like 300 or 400 folks come to each one of our events, and everyone likes them. And again, they're typically free.
That's awesome. So where can somebody go to find out about that? What is the website people can go to?
That's Veteran Resource Group.
VeteranResourceGroup.com.
Yeah,
okay.
And we have a big Facebook presence as well. So that's one group, and the last group that I support is called the GI Go Fund, and that's gigo.org, and that is a group headquartered here in Newark, and I live in New York, and so this is very close. Mm-hmm. They have national programs. They support. They host stand downs to help our homeless veterans. They have toy drives to help needy families around Christmas. But also, what's one that I really like is that they just started the very first veteran or incubator for veteran businesses in New Jersey. Oddly, nothing like that exists, and so they have space, which is sponsored by Panasonic and PSEG and Prudential and other groups as well, to have space so veteran entrepreneurs and spouses can come and have space for their businesses. The organization GI Go Fund will pay for their accounting services and web services and legal things. Yeah, so they don't have to worry about the things that have nothing to do with their business, so they can just focus on what's in their wheelhouse. And so that doesn't exist anywhere else either. So
it really doesn't.
I like working with groups that are kind of changing the space and trying to provide new services. So I'm excited to see what the GI Go Fund is able to do here.
That is awesome. And what I love about those too is that it is there are, like you said, so many nonprofits popping up. And I've been in this community for over a decade now, right? And I still don't know all of them, but I've seen them popping up. But so many of them, and not to take away from what they do, but it's great to have the one-day events where you can come celebrate and party and hang out and hike and have some wine and do some yoga and all that, right? But then you go home from these events and you're like, well, now what? It doesn't do anything to push you forward. And sometimes people can get trapped in the cycle of just going to those events and going to these events. So I love that. I love that what you're doing is like, hey, you get in because of where you've been and what you've done, but now what are you going to do? Like, let's move forward. And that's phenomenal. And so much of the struggle is everything you described in the GI Go Fund. Those are the things that keep people down. Like, it can be frustrating to have to navigate all those complexities and all that. And you're already dealing with so many things, like reassimilating to life and family and getting back together. Now you have to learn this whole business. And so to do that, I would be so curious to follow up on that too and see the side effects of, follow your success stories, because I think that's phenomenal. And like I said, I've out here all these years and I'm still hearing of new ones. So there's also people I can link you up with to help get those words out too across the country, because this is a newly emerging thing. I know of a handful of people acknowledging the same thing. Like, hey, there's so many of us. There's so much overlap. Let's help people find it and get through the noise now. So finding that network and that one chain where people can get the word out, I think would be awesome.
Because it is a challenge, but you're right. Our community, we take care of our own. It's great for us to tell each other about what we're doing. I think that's critical, but we also have to, constantly be looking for ways to include other folks who aren't veterans, because that's the vast majority of Americans. So many want to help, they just don't know how to do it. The more we can work together, the better. Yep,
awesome. So now you, again, part of what you do is you are a speaker, and you go to venues all over. You go to colleges, you go to corporations, you go to private events. Tell us, what point did you say, you know what, I'm going to use my story and I'm going to tell, like, how did that evolve into, it's one thing to like be at a Rotary Club or a community event and say, hey, tell your story, but to evolve that into, this is what I'm going to do.
Real business. I continued. After I recovered from my injury, I stayed in the reserves. I went back to work full-time as a lawyer at the Department of Justice, and then on Capitol Hill, and then with the FBI in D.C. on the counterterrorism team as a lawyer, but supporting a counterterrorism squad. I wrapped all that up in 2013. I medically retired from the Marine Corps, and I have been doing some speaking on the side. I got permission from the FBI to do that, and so I had been asked by a couple, like you said, Rotary clubs and small groups and Marine Corps birthday balls and stuff like that, which is not a business model.
Right.
And so I was like, when I was pleased that they wanted to hear from me. And
Yeah.
I have a background as a speaker, as being a trial attorney. And so then I started being approached by different companies and getting paid to do these. And I thought, okay, I could potentially build a business out of this. And I did. One thing I would highlight to entrepreneurs who may be listening is that as I said, I built this on the side, so I had my full salary from my job all the time. And then I waited until I retired from the military, and the medical retirement's the same as a regular retirement, so I started getting paid the next day, and I had VA comp as well. So I had a safety net in case I actually couldn't get business. Right. But I waited and made sure I had things in place. So that was 5 years ago. And so I started speaking at smaller events, but I've grown and my fees have increased, and I spent a lot of time on a website. I've written 2 books. I write articles all the time. I've grown the way you're supposed to, and try to leverage my networks. And so, as you said, I speak all over the place. Around Veterans Day this year, I spoke at Apple out in California. I spoke at, I don't know, probably in a given year, I'll probably speak to 20 or 25 corporations, and then I do still do some events for free to military groups and nonprofits and sometimes schools. But not everyone who asks, but I do have a certain number that I do. And then I also do a lot of mentoring for speaking as well, because there's a lot of particularly veterans who want to get there and tell their story. And it's not easy. It's not.
No, it's not.
You're an army of one. Unless you have an incredible story, maybe a Medal of Honor recipient or someone like that who has agents who's doing a lot for them. For most of us, it's just like what you go through. It's a lot of business development, and you're in charge of everything. So it's hard work, but very gratifying.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you speak on? Like, what is the difference on a talk you would give to Apple versus at Yale or something?
Sure. Yeah. So okay. Well, you say Yale, but I spoke to the Princeton Club, for instance. Here.
Princeton. Of course I got that wrong. Okay.
No. I didn't know you even knew about that. That wasn't a highly celebrated thing.
I just guessed. I figured you'd speak at those venues.
Yeah. So Apple, for instance, was on Veterans Day, and so they have I spoken from on the same stage where Steve Jobs launched the iPod. So that was kind of cool. Fun. So I spoke, and so did another veteran. He was a pretty awesome guy named Jimmy Hatch, who was a Navy SEAL for over 20 years. Yeah. He was injured in the Bo Bergdahl, one of the Bo Bergdahl rescue missions. He was shot in the leg. Yeah. And so we both talked about just our story. It was almost like a TED Talk where we had about 10 minutes to talk. And so I focused on overcoming adversity, a little bit on my story, but about how, overcoming adversity and how that applies to regular day at work and the private sector. Right. And then when I talked to the Princeton Club, for instance, it was about leadership. And then I moderated a panel of 3 veterans who had done incredibly well here in New York. And so we talked about the leadership skills that are in the military and how that applies to the private sector. But usually I go and talk to corporations about leadership, overcoming adversity, teamwork, and that you're stronger than you think you are, and that change is good, and you can thrive and change. I've been through a lot of change. So I say, I stay in my lane. I'm not all things to all people. Right. I talk about what I know and then apply it to their audience. It's not just off the shelf. Here's my thoughts on this topic. I learn about that company and what they're going through, and that way they walk away with some good insights. Yeah,
awesome. Okay, and then as we get into our closing part here, we talk a lot about at American Snippets. Part of why we started this, because we got tired of hearing everybody talk about how the American dream is dead and offer all these excuses as to why nobody was going anywhere with their lives, right? So, I would ask you, it'll be a twofold question. We'll start with the first one. How can we here in this country as Americans, how can we push through whatever it is that we feel is holding us back and utilize the specific opportunities in this country for, to realize our own version of the American dream the way you have?
Yeah, I'll start with that. I mentioned earlier that you can only control so much. You can control what's in your head and how you think and how you react to things, and you can also choose to what activities you want to engage in. And so one thing I learned as a wounded warrior is that I lost control over everything. Something happened that day and I couldn't control it. And I couldn't control anything after that for quite some time. So I think a lot of other wounded warriors feel the same way. We want to be in control of our lives. And I think everyone really wants that. And so I don't want to be a pinball that's just bouncing around randomly and letting other people make decisions for me. So we mentioned at the top of the piece that I'm the Chief Business Development Officer at JobPath. And that's because I think JobPath is an incredible platform for veterans. I want to spend my time, as a seeker, but also working on this because for me, employment was a big part of my recovery in getting some sense of worth and really pushing through. When you talk about the American dream, yes, our country faces challenges just like every other country does. There's lots of macro events going on and nothing's perfect, but there are tons of opportunities here, especially for veterans and military spouses. I believe that America cares, whether they're left, right, or center. I think they care about us and want to help if they know what we're looking for. And so as veterans are typically not that great for at asking for help. We're not great at networking initially. We're not great at, that, but we have to, we have to be okay with saying, here's who I am, here's my elevator pitch, here's what I want to do, can we work together? And if not, all good, but it's not personal, it's business. So, I just think that we're used to talking about the team and the mission and the organization that we're in, and that's not a great mentality. It's great while you're in the military. It's not so great when you're an entrepreneur, and it really has to compete in a very busy environment. So I would just recommend to folks, pick a few things, pick incremental steps, have a long-term goal, but have short-term goals, and have things you can cross off your list so you feel like you're really accomplishing something. There is a difference between being busy and being impactful, and less time being busy and just really knocking off things that will help get you to where you're trying to go.
Yeah, that's a huge thing for your mindset too, to keep going even when it's hard. Like, okay, well, at least I accomplished A, B, and C today. That feeling of accomplishment is important to feed that. Otherwise, you go the other way. Okay, as we talked about that, then when I would say to you, what does the American dream mean to you? Like, Justin Constantine, what does the American dream mean to you?
For me, the American dream is, I'm now an entrepreneur. Now I'm a business owner, and so it centers around that for me. And that's not for everyone, but that's for me. And it means living in an environment where we have opportunities to grow, and we're not really shackled by a government that gets in the way of that. We live in an environment where people typically want to support each other, maybe not our main competitor, but other folks. We have access to a lot of people through the internet and through events. I mean, I go to a million networking events or fun events, and I'm constantly trying to build my relationships. Here in America, at least the places I've been, that mindset is alive and well. People appreciate entrepreneurs here, I believe, and we also have a strong sense of community at a very local level, which I think everything starts at a local level, and there's opportunities there, no matter where you are in the country.
Awesome. So speaking of you being an entrepreneur in your own business, we're going to wind this down. I want to give you a chance to talk about JobPath and the company that you've built and how it's changing things for veterans.
Yeah, thank you. JobPath's been here for 6 years. I'm a late addition to JobPath. I've just been here over a year, but I joined it because I've worked with other veteran employment platforms, but this one brings such powerful technology to the veteran space, and that's why we get 24,000 veterans and spouses every month.
Wow.
Yeah, and so when we say we're the most robust platform, that's true. We have about 200,000 in our candidates in our database actively looking for work. Not people who signed up 5 years ago, but people in the last 90 days, because everything's free for the vets here. I mean, the companies have to pay, but everything's free for the veterans. So we have over 200 courses they can take for business skills and life skills to supplement their resume. We have a mentorship portal. They can build their resume. That's very easy to build. And ours is the only site that's guaranteed to work with every company's applicant tracking system, the computers on the back ends, because we work with all of them. A lot of times veterans are frustrated because they submit a resume and don't hear anything back. And I think, oh, well, that company actually doesn't really care about veterans. A lot of times they never got it because there's a technology veteran, but because we are can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Well, because we are a technology platform at our core, we can do The answer is never no. It's always yes. If a client's like, hey, can you build this tool for us? Yes, we can. So we offer all this stuff for veterans. We offer even more for HR professionals, because if they're not happy, if they don't know how to hire veterans, none of us push forward. So we just launched, one last plug, we just launched a partnership with SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resource Management, the largest HR association in the country.
Wow.
And so, they have 350,000 individual HR members. So now SHRM is offering a platform to hire veterans, and we're the back-end resource for that. And so every other provider like us has been trying to partner with SHRM. They published my book on veteran employment earlier this year.
Awesome.
And so now we have this relationship, and we think this is a game changer for veteran employment. So that's yourjobpath.com.
Awesome. Justin, thank you so much. I'm going to highly recommend everybody. Justin, where can they follow you online and find out everything that you're doing?
I like LinkedIn the best. I'm most active there. Of course, I'm on Facebook and Twitter, but really LinkedIn, as a business person, I appreciate it the best. Justin Constantine.
Justin Constantine on LinkedIn. All right, everybody, you heard it. I hope that everyone listening has pulled away at least one of these solid nuggets that he's had to offer. Go ahead and follow him on LinkedIn, connect with him there, and you can always learn something and grow your network there as well. That is a pretty good platform. I like it myself. Justin, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Of course. Thank you, Barb.
All right. Thank you.